Hey everybody, Dr. Sandal here with Out My Clinic. We're breaking the boundaries of mainstream medicine, and today we are talking shift with Ashley Combs,
Hello.
the integrative nutrition therapist here at Out My Clinic.
Hi. Good to be here. It's fun.
So today we were thinking about talking about longevity from a dietary perspective, and it's an enormous conversation, but we might kind of scratch the surface and play with it a little bit.
Okay. That sounds good.
When someone comes to you for dietary advice and their focus is longevity, what runs through your head?
Uh, Several things. Um, okay, one of the things that we look at will be supporting gut microbiome,
Mm,
supporting our good gut bacteria. Because our microbiome, like I like to say, just like runs the show for the
yeah,
most
I
part.
feel like we're just learning that more and more. I found
Yeah,
myself saying a lot. The more we know about the gut microbiome, the more we realize we don't know.
absolutely. In terms of our immune health, our inflammation,
Mm,
that's going to be really important. Also, like just neurofunctioning,
yeah,
hormone synthesis. So it plays a huge
crazy.
role. Yeah,
Yeah.
and making sure we are eating the right foods, having those certain foods in our diet to make those good gut bacteria happy
Mm.
is really important.
When people ask, how do I preferentially support the good bacteria versus
Mm.
the bad bacteria? What do you think about there? Is there a one size fits all? Are there trends?
There are all the above,
Mm-hmm.
but for the most part, very individualized. So looking at, let's say, what's fiber look like in your diet?
Mm,
You know, do you get an array or not at all in terms of like fruits and
not that
vegetables?
uncommon, right?
Not at all, right? And then maybe even things like starches, like resistant
Mm,
starches, to really kind of enhance the environment of our intestines and kind of
mm-hmm.
make it a place where a home that good gut bacteria want to thrive in.
Yeah,
Things
I,
like
I
that.
like to use the analogy of a garden, the gut garden.
Yeah.
And, I like to think about us having a resilient ecosystem. And we have our own gut garden, and it's unique to us. I like petunias, they like marigolds. And let's say that I want to bring a little bit of change to that. Just like a garden, we don't really want to be catastrophic and excited about it. We don't want to be too much. Let's nudge it. Change in a garden takes place over a season.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can kind of change that environment. Maybe we change the fertilizer, and that's usually how I think about those prebiotics or those fibers. It's like,
Yes.
what's the environment? But also, you're right. I love the way you put that about the environment. It's like, well, it's also how shaded is it, right? And actually, literally, there's a lot of study right now happening about light and how getting light into our gut makes such a
Mm,
difference. Of course, if we're out in the bright sun, that actually penetrates the skin to a degree.
very
And it
true.
turns out that especially red light and red light therapy and infrared light therapy, is getting tons of study, changes our biome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's very
crazy.
fascinating. Yeah.
So the analogy of a garden for me really kind of carries things, and it's like, okay, give it all the right good stuff. Get the manure in there. Maybe that's too close to home, but yeah, get all the different pieces in there, and then you
Yeah.
throw down new seeds sometimes. But one of the things that I often see with the gut biome is that people are really focused on probiotics.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I guess think about when I think about probiotics is that they're overprescribed, they're
Absolutely.
oversold. It's too individualized of a garden to have there be a one size fits all solution. And if I want to, if I'm growing marigolds, I could throw in a bunch of seeds for daffodils and just throw in seeds and throw in seeds and throw in seeds and throw in seeds and throw in seeds. But are they really going to take? Or is that just a bunch of debris that now all the marigolds have to compete with, and
Compete,
it just
yeah, for
gets
nutrients.
weird?
That's true.
It's a
Mm-hmm.
cool topic.
Yeah, it really is. I completely agree with the probiotics and just the over prescribing of it,
I think it's
and
marketing.
it really is. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they know the biome is buzzworthy
Yeah,
these
right,
days,
right, right,
and
right.
so yeah,
That's dangerous.
it is.
we're in a cool position in one sense because we're on the wave, the cultural wave of this sort of stuff. We've been doing this for a long time now, and now everybody else is like, hey, that's trendy, we like that. And one of the benefits of having been here for a while is we know what's simply a trend, what's just buzzworthy and not fundamentally useful.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think longevity is becoming buzzworthy as well. There's a lot of longevity pioneers out there right now, and there's this great term, longevity athletes. People who are competing to slow their aging to the maximal rate. And it's awesome. It's really interesting. A lot to be done, a lot that's not perfect yet.
Sure.
A lot of buzzworthy stuff. But it's fascinating.
It is. It is fascinating. And it kind of goes back to it's very individualized also. I think that I can think of a number of patients here who I would probably call a longevity athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some serious go-getters.
We do.
We're like, I want to do this the right way, and I take the time and the attention, and it's impressive.
And they're doing the things.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a lot of gut things, and I could talk on and on about like what we should do with food wise, what needs to be in the diet. But man, beyond the gut, like the movements, moving our bodies, circulating lymph, detoxifications, making sure that's all prime. But also mindset is huge.
It is overwhelming, perhaps. I think when people think about their health, and longevity is maybe the capstone of that. It's like, okay, if I'm really healthy, I start to think about longevity. What should I focus my attention on? And you're right, there's all of these different things. And I love your point about personalization, because for some people, X, Y, and Z are natural. But the hard parts are A, B, and C. I'm like, okay, well, cool. Let's help organize ourselves towards improving that if that's the part that's hard for you. Like we were talking earlier today, and I was like, diet is not my strong suit in many regards, personally. My relationship with food is not perfect. I know that. I'm a stress faster. I'm kind of like, I'll just not eat. My poor biome is like, help. Why are we starving? Like, just tough it out, body. We got stuff to do. That's kind of my MO.
Yeah.
And, there's all sorts of stuff that I excel at. And we all kind of have our own little strengths and weaknesses. And it's like, we'd like to have everything maximized if we're hunting longevity. A lot of times that's just, how much time and attention and effort can we put into that?
Totally. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's a challenge.
It is. Attention and awareness.
Yeah,
I feel like
love that.
we talk a lot about awareness, whether it be in our provider meetings or I'm sure like in most, if not all, patient meetings as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Awareness is the root of health. That's my
That's
maybe hackneyed saying by now. Like, how many times a day do I say that?
But it's good to like kind of pound that in that it's, that awareness is key, and especially for aging.
Yeah.
Kind of slow down that natural decline.
We get really focused on whatever the recent study is on. Like we get really narrowed in on, for instance, lactobacillus for probiotics. Right? Every probiotic is full of lactobacillus because there just happened to be some studies back in the day that kind of caught traction. And then all the other studies were done on the same thing, rather than thinking about the enormous host of other bacterium that are beneficial for us.
Right.
And one of the cool things about longevity, I think, is that people are really trying to become, they're really pushing the envelope. And this is a really fertile soil. Sorry to abuse the garden analogy there.
Keep going, I love it.
But it's really fertile soil for people going, okay, hang on. Sure, lactobacillus is useful in some cases for some people, but it's not the end all be all. Let's keep pushing. Let's be better. Let's really fight for this. That's what gets me kind of pumped up about longevity. It's like this whole invitation to really going way out there with health science and understanding. And it's not just managing illness. It's not just fixing illness. It's not even in the realm of illness anymore. It's like, let's go way out there. At some point, they're going to start doing studies looking at the gut biome, and they're going to be like, yeah, the people who live the longest have these exact percents.
Mm.
Now, of course, they're going to be a little bit off because that's for that individual, right? There'll be that assumption still. It's just fascinating, though. I mean, it's really going to become just cooler and cooler and cooler. Like in the next 5 or 10 years, stuff is going to blow up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Just, and I don't even know where to go with that. It's just kind of, I like to pause on that and go, holy moly, where are we going with this?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that fascinates me is that it's going to come back around. Like one of the places that it goes as they get hyper detailed and they lean into, percentiles of bacteria, we oftentimes see this process of science make a full circle where we come back around to the starting place and we're like, oh yeah, all the old wisdom really did kind of nail that. Sometimes better than the science does.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing I see a lot in dietary circles. People are very attuned to our ancestors' wisdom on that stuff. Like there's the Weston A. Price group, and there's a lot of
Yes.
ancestral attention and ancestral eating, and people are like, you know what, our ancestors probably did this kind of right. We're evolved or adapted for that.
Right.
What's your sense of that and kind of the old dietary wisdom on longevity?
So I completely subscribe to just all those lines of thinking, and that I'll just say following of like they knew how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They in many facets. So for like one example, when I think of, because I talk a lot about this with some patients, like when I think of like ancestral wisdom, I think of like qualities of fats. That
Interesting.
becomes a big thing, and fat is something that is also important for longevity.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of right information, but there's also a lot of marketing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some people whose entire personas are around
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. So yeah. So something like fat. It's really important to get all the unsaturated. You think like
Mm-hmm.
the mono and the polyunsaturated; those are very beneficial for us. Our omega-3 fatty acids obviously are very essential, especially if we're talking longevity.
Yeah.
And
When it's hard in landlocked Kansas, it's like, where are our
exactly,
ocean oils?
exactly, yeah,
Tricky.
yeah. Some good, small cold water fatty fish or some good seaweed and algae.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's also I like to kind of shift mindsets on the world of saturated,
Hmm.
and really quality over everything. And
Mm. That's a
things
big
like that.
shift. Yeah.
It's a big one.
People are more focused on grams of fat
Right.
rather than the quality of that gram. That's a big shift.
It's a big shift. It's something that can cause a lot of friction with, I
Hmm.
mean, a lot of topics within nutrition and just talking about people's
It's
diets.
controversial,
It
isn't it?
is, yeah. But
Yeah.
it's it's
I forget that
important.
sometimes. We kind of are so into our philosophy of health here at
Mm-hmm.
the clinic. We challenge each other frequently. We come to an accord and we say, okay, cool, this is the path going forward. And I sometimes forget that, there's a lot of people who agree strongly. I mean, we think about like statin medications as a complexity there. Like
Mm-hmm.
what is the value of cholesterol? Is a
Yes,
big part of the missing equation. So there's tons of controversy. It's fascinating.
it is.
Lots
It's
to
very
figure
fascinating.
out.
And I know I mean, research is ever evolving, and I like,
Right.
we often talk like, I, our clinic, or at least like what we're doing here, we like to be on the far end of,
Mm.
let's push it, let's push the boundaries, and really see,
Gosh, it's fun.
it is. It's so, it's so exciting, and I know our patients are really thankful for it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're thankful for them. Yeah, it's our privilege to be able to engage with people who really want that highest degree of optimization for their personal health.
Mm.
They're open to thinking about it experimentally and personally, and kind of going, okay, how do we push this? That's just cool. It's
Hmm.
a team effort. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your favorite thing when you are approached by a patient who is, you know, we'll say a longevity athlete or you
Mm.
know, trying to be, what are some things that you look at?
Dietary wise or generally
All
or
the things.
yeah, oh gosh, yeah, we're gonna be here a minute. Yeah. Um, I think the most important thing is that they've taken care of all the fundamentals. I oftentimes think about longevity starting after neutral. You know, if
Mhm.
people have chronic health stuff, they're kind of in the negative, if you will. It's like, let's get you up to neutral, and then we're going to get you above neutral. We're going to get you way into the positive. And for me, that's kind of where the longevity stuff lies. It's like, here we don't feel great. Here we feel pretty darn good. You know, hey, I'm back to normal. Life is good. It's like, okay, well, don't stop there.
Yeah.
You're like, now let's get you feeling freaking fantastic 100% of the time. That's the goal. And for extra years, right? We're really pushing the envelope on that. And I think, unfortunately, certainly here in America, you know, most people are somewhere in this range.
Mhm.
Even people who are really diligent, because we have so many hazards. You know, everyone is really working their butts off. We don't spend enough time or attention on our own introspection,
Right.
right? And even people who are real go-getters and they pay attention to this, myself, I'm included in this, right? It's like we were talking about stress fasting. What is that, right? It's like a neglect of self due to getting stuff done.
Mhm.
And so there's this broad range here of like, okay, let's really make sure that's just great and stable. That's the first step. That's what I always advise people. It's like, if there's anything that's not feeling perfect, well, let's get that all together.
Mhm.
Sometimes I've started into longevity projects too early. Like patients are really gung ho and they're like, hey, I really want to see the data. I know I'm maybe not totally polished through here, but let's do it. Let's flip over and talk about this stuff. And we get the data, and the data's fascinating and massive. You know, we get like a 118-page data report on
Wow.
people's epigenetic age clocks, which is just fascinating. And there's so much to do with that. But if we haven't really refined a lot of this, a lot of times we get all that data and we say, yeah, the data says we got to do this.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, cool. You know, sometimes people need to see that and they're like, great, I know it's important. Let me nail that now. I'm going to take 30 minutes every day to do my pranayama practice or
Right.
whatever it was that, for me, I'm like, I know I should do that. Sometimes it's nice to get confronted with the data to be like, okay, yeah, I'm really going to do it.
Yeah. It's that push you needed.
Yeah, yeah.
Visually, especially. Yeah.
How
Absolutely.
about yourself?
Uh so fasting is one thing
Mm,
and again, individualized, very
uh-huh, yeah.
individualized. But that's something um, that can be brought up if,
Talk about wisdom of the ancients there too, right? Like
right.
they were all really loud about that,
Exactly.
whether
Yeah.
sometimes they wanted to be or not. Like they had built-in fasting, unfortunately,
Yeah.
sometimes.
But there is some honoring that wisdom, I
Mm,
think is very beneficial. I mean, just the idea of let's say 16, 24 hour,
mhm,
we could talk all day on fasting, but just the idea of fasting and just letting our bodies do, whether it be, flushing out cellular waste, just
mhm.
detoxifying. Um, there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
especially for
It's kind of a
aging,
cheat.
it's
It's
kind of,
very efficient.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There's a lot of to carry that idea forward, right? Like there are people who will use combinations of a particular persimmon extract called fisetin to
Oh,
activate
yes.
cellular autophagy to try to get these sort of zombie cells or senescent cells to get them digested. Well, you have to use really high doses. It's kind of hard to get. Sometimes you combine it with other things to really get the effect for an individual. Fasting just works better. Fasting is the thing. Our
Mm-hmm.
body is aligned with that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a good persimmon. It's like you got to eat a lot of persimmons or a lot of persimmon extract to get that. And it's like fasting, it is so multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just autophagy of senescent cells. It's, like you were saying, removal of cellular debris. The list goes on and on and on. And it's also just great for awareness.
Yes.
Like coming back to that link of why aren't we fixing all of these for ourselves? And it's like, okay, We just need the time and the awareness, the presence.
The presence.
Fasting is super sweet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it can be challenging. People are scared of fasting, right?
It's a little daunting.
Yeah.
It's a little bit.
What is your take on that? If someone's like, okay, I saw this little YouTube video, fasting sounds awesome. I did some research. I'm into it. I'm a little worried about that.
Yeah.
What advice do you give people?
I feel like baby steps is always kind
yeah.
of the first approach. Baby steps to everything. I mean, starting off with, see how a 12 to 14-hour fast looks like. Whether that's, you get done with dinner early, or, you have like an early dinner and then you eat, I don't know,
10 a.m. or something.
Yeah, exactly.
You give it a little extra space on both sides.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of play around with that to like how you feel with it, what your schedule,
Yeah, right.
That's a factor.
Right.
Like
logistics are real.
And the logistics are very real.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, baby steps.
Yeah. I like that. You said something that really struck a chord with me. Play with it. I think maybe this is going to become a corollary for me in that awareness is the root of health. There's something about play there. Like play is the path to awareness.
Oh.
Because if we're playing with it, let's say that we're going, oh yeah, this is going to be cool. I'm convinced, Ashley convinced me, Neela convinced me, I saw their YouTube video, I want to play with this. Like, okay, cool, play with it. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? I eat dinner a little earlier. I push breakfast a little back. And I'm going to have fun with it. I'm going to see how I feel. I'm going to check out what that's like. That playful attitude, I think, really mitigates a lot of the stress signaling, which in my mind is one of the reasons people fear fasting. Fasting does release natural stress signals. It's kind of a natural defense. It's like if we're starving, we need to have a fire lit under our butts to go, chase a deer down or hunt some berries or whatever, right? It's like, go for it. You're starving.
We're starving here.
And so we have this biochemical signal, this cortisol goes up the longer we're fasting, up to a certain point, and then it plateaus out. But people maybe appropriately are appreciating that stress signal. It's there for a reason. It's like, danger, you should eat food. And just like talking about what's buzzworthy, right? Hot, cold therapy.
Oh, yeah.
There's this idea called hormesis or eustress or stress normalization. Those are all roughly synonyms. The idea being that you take something that's kind of stressful and you have fun with it, and then it melts it. The body goes, oh, that's novel. I like that thing. Let's play with that. And so it comes back to your point about play. It's like, yeah, play with it. Play with pushing your breakfast back a little bit. And yeah, your body will sing to you a bit. The alarm bell will go off and be like, oh, you're supposed to be eating. Give me some blueberries. But if we're having fun with it, that's a completely different vibe. The body kind of relaxes into it and goes, And I bet as we study this, we're going to start to understand, just like we do with hot cold therapy, that being able to relax into that stimulus is actually part of the therapy. And I've never heard anybody talk about that yet. And I'm not, I don't listen to every podcast all the time.
I think you've said it. You heard it here.
Yeah, there you go. There you go, guys.
No, I truly believe that. Absolutely.
We see that with patients, right? It's like the ones who can have fun with fasting are the ones who are successful with it. They're like, this is an adventure. Like, how far can I go? And then, 12 hours becomes 16. And they're like, that was neat. I enjoyed that. I kind of felt a little bit of a rush. Things were different. My exercise was different. My mind was different. Their awareness shifts. And then they're like, I'm going to do it for 24 hours. Try and stop me. And then eventually, when we get into larger fasts, that really becomes a different animal. It's like
absolutely
a lot more intense, a lot more challenging, almost kind of bordering on the spiritual. And again, that's what our ancestors all talked about. They're like, oh, fast for spiritual reasons. That's what they primarily were passing that information along about. But yeah, you get into a 3-day fast, it gets pretty weird. It's different.
I haven't personally done it, but yes,
we're gonna have to do like a retreat, an Atma retreat. We'll get everybody together. We'll all do a 3-day fast.
Let's write that down. Yeah.
That'd be fun. Yeah, it's, and again, if it's playful, it's great. If it's not, we tell our body how to think about stress. You know, there's a active component to that. If I don't like something, I'm going to clamp down about it. Yeah. And if I like something, even if it's the same thing, if it's a challenge, but I like it, we're going to open up and be like, oh, this is great. There's a longevity scientist, Aubrey de Grey. He's an old school longevity science. Brilliant fellow, looks like Rasputin, kind of a character. He's been around for a long, long time. He was advocating for longevity science way earlier than a lot of people, so much respect to him. He was on a podcast recently, and someone asked him, they're like, hey, Dr. de Grey, what is the common link among these people who live a really long time? And he said, it's fascinating. There's not really that many patterns. You know, one might think, oh, they all eat a bunch of fish, or they all sauna every day, or you would think there were patterns like this, but there aren't really. He said the thing that does unite them all is that none of them stress out about anything. And it's not that they live simple lives. A lot of times they're CEOs of multinational corporations. Wow. They're just people who have conquered that stress response. Everything is play to them. Massive challenge, oh neat, let's do this. Let's do it, yeah. Little challenge, love it, let's do that. So that kind of links back into what we're talking about there, that importance of being able to normalize that stress. It does turn out that there's a massive trend for longevity. Funny how that goes full circle.
Yeah, absolutely. So just being unfazed to these big stressors.
Yeah.
And just being able to kind of like downshift in terms of like our nervous system and that, like, you know, dysregulation. Yeah. I call it the whole polyvagal theory.
Right.
You know, and get to a place of openness and, you know, openness and connection and being able to be positive and play with it. Yeah. I like that. That's huge.
Yeah.
Something we should all strive for.
Yeah. And I'm thinking for myself, I'm like, how do I do that more with my diet? You know, kind of tying together these pieces of our conversation. I'm like, okay, well, if I have some limitation here, it's probably around diet and gut health. For me, that's just kind of my cross to bear. You know, I'm like, that's my sticking point. And, you know, the more that we can keep that playful rather than something, I think everyone has that sense of like, oh, there's the thing for me.
Right.
You know, oh, I have my relationship with my so-and-so, or there's always something stuck. Everyone's got some low-hanging fruit that pings them.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we don't go into those things because they suck. You know, we're like, I hate it. That's why it's my thing. And maybe this is maybe an interesting point. It's like, can we restructure our attention to that? Can we make it playful? Can we intentionally bring in that levity to our own personal nonsense, our own stuck thing? It's like, okay, for me, it's that. Let me flip that around. Let me have some fun with this stuck thing. That sounds like a longevity hack to me.
I think it is. Flipping and just like shifting our perspective on all those things that make us feel uncomfortable, I think are very vital. One thing when you're talking about like how can we find something that, you know, kind of makes us just a little stressed out from whatever past stress or trauma, finding a way to flip it and play with it. One thing that came to mind is just some mindful eating hacks. You know,
interesting.
Whether it's, you know, slowing down. I was talking to a patient yesterday about just how to practice that presence in their food experiences. And so really it's all about engaging all the senses, you know, in your
kind of make it fun. Yeah,
exactly. In your feeding, you know, go down the list of, you know, with whether it's sight, you know, look at this food as if, you know, like, just a curious mind to it, like a child's mind, like, what is this? Why does this look this way? Or one of the prompts is, if you were trying to describe this food to someone who has never ever heard of or seen this food, how would you,
I love that. That's
yeah,
great.
it just really experimental kind of in that kind of play.
Uh-huh. Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that childlike wonder about it. Kind of
Exactly.
keep it fun.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. Mindful eating. I think everyone's heard that term, but
Right.
I don't think people really do sit with it. And I love that you brought out a specific thing. I've heard that term often, and I've talked to patients about that term, and I can still do better at it.
Mhm.
Right? It's like, how often do I actually sit down and practice that? And part of it is, I guess I've coded it as a to do, or as a like a,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it's coded. It's not coded as play, right?
Mhm.
Like it should be fun. And be like, that's a hilarious exercise.
Yeah.
Like I'm watching my 1.5-year-old. She just dug a carrot out of the garden, a hangover from last year.
Mhm.
And it's like the look on her face. You can just have so much fun. She's like,
Yeah.
"What is this thing?" Like, "Oh, you can eat that." And she's like, "What?" You can like, "Yeah, try it." And it's like, and it's like the whole experience is just so
I
cool.
love that.
And it'd be fascinating to see. I'd love to be able to like have a crystal ball or run a giant study where we look at the longevity of people who maybe for an intervention, the only thing they do is they have someone who bugs them about mindfully eating. And
Mm.
that's it.
That's it. That's
Right? Like, what does that look like for longevity? And I bet you that would really move the needle because it generates that awareness.
Mhm.
Obviously, it improves the digestion. It's going to improve food choices because people will be more aware of what fits for their biome.
Absolutely.
The whole kind of conversation we've had actually wraps into that one element of mindful eating. So maybe we'll kind of throw that to the audience as the thing to play with.
Yeah.
The takeaway from this is go home and really engage your senses in your food.
Mhm.
Just play with it.
Just be inquisitive about it and have that childlike mind. Your one-year
Love
old's
that.
eye of, is this food? I can eat.
It came out of the ground. It's covered in dirt. There we go.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks,
Love that.
Ashley. Awesome
Thank
to
you.
wrap on this stuff. A lot of fun. And I look forward to doing it again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Catch you guys.